All right, here we are joined by my favorite Irish speaking bloke, Geoff Cooling. He's been on the podcast a number of times. Episode 100 would not be complete without him. So, wanted to make sure I brought you on, Geoff, to have you be a part of this, and wanted to get a sense from you of what's on your radar right now, what's interesting to you, what's at the top of Geoff Cooling's mind. That might actually be a loaded question that I don't know if I want the answer to.
Yeah. Me and the voices don't fight anymore. We just get on now. So it's I think for me, first of all, thanks Dave again for having me on. I always enjoy our chats. But I think for me, like, what's been top of my mind, I suppose, for the last probably year or two is really OTC, self fitting, and its possible effects on the profession globally. And I know it's played a big part in a lot of people's thoughts, but there's a couple of things that have happened, I suppose, in the recent past that kind of, have made me even think more. I've said all along, or I feel that the the way for the profession to continue to be relevant to consumers is actually to engage them in the way that they want. Um, and offer services that make sense to them. And that would include, like, services around OTC products and, the retail of OTC products, etc., etc. Um, and there's been a couple of kind of, I suppose, what I feel is kind of watershed moments in the last while that are starting to indicate how things are shaping up. I think the first one, or a most recent one, and I wrote an article about it, was the introduction of GN Jabra self-fit hearing aid stroke earbud, right? And that's a really interesting product coming from, again, from a major manufacturer. Hello Go from Sonova, and their product, again, they've kind of relaunched that product and they're moving forward with it. I'd assume that they're probably going to launch it in the States pretty soon, pretty much as soon as they can. And again, that's it was kind of a decent indication of how the manufacturers feel about kind of OTC products or DTC. And both of those manufacturers have kind of decided that, or it seems to me that they've kind of decided that a blended model approach is the way forward. Um, Hello Go are doing it slightly different, kind of like in Oz at the moment. You can buy a Hello Go hearing aids online. They're relatively expensive, but in the context of hearing aid prices in Australia, they're actually not that expensive. Australia seems to be the last place in the world that gets 10 grand for a set of hearing aids. Like, it's mad, it's crazy. But they're relatively expensive. But what they're doing is they're kind of saying, well, listen, these are the products, great products, blah, 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 but you can have a better experience if you go to such and such. And they're kind of edging people towards their own captured retail in Australia for a service package. And that makes a whole lot of sense to me because these manufacturers have captured retail, so they can't cut their own throat. And I think for the profession in a wider sense, and I know that lots of professionals will be, well, they're fucking selling this and fucking cutting our throats, and some people might feel that getting involved in that is anathema to them. But I think it's the way forward. I think that our involvement in this kind of blended model will continue to keep us relevant when those people move on to what we recognise as more traditional high technology hearing aids. So that though, and I wrote actually a letter to GN told them they're fucking idiots. And they said, yeah, we know them. Because basically, The GN product is slightly different, and and it's priced slightly differently again, and they're forcing people to go to professionals to purchase this product. And I don't, to be with all the best will in the world, I don't think that's don't think that's a good strategy for either GN or for consumers. And while I am a professional, I suppose I've kind of become known as a consumer advocate, perhaps. But yeah, so I think that's not a good strategy for them. I think that, in fact, and I said that quite possibly the product would fail because of their retail strategy or because of the distribution strategy. It probably wouldn't fail because of the product. The product is actually pretty damn good. I use the Jabra products on a regular basis. Listen to music, bopping along. And also, when people speak to me, I can actually understand what the fuck they're saying. So that's generally handy enough, you know. So yeah, they're real good products. But if you're trying to touch people who don't really feel that they want to go to a profession, why the fuck would you get them to purchase it off a professional? It doesn't make sense. Anyway, stop because I only got irritated. So that was kind of those watershed moments that kind of formed my thinking. The other thing is I've spoken about Lexi Hearing in the past, and Lexi Hearing have really, really impressed me. And I think that the whole industry could learn from Lexi Hearing. Their customer journey, how they manage their customers, how they drive them forward, is outstanding. Like it's really outstanding. But and I think a lot of people focus on the hearing aids they sell, and originally they were intercom hearing aids. Recently, as we know now, they're selling Bose hearing aids, which is another fascinating thing that I'll come back to in a moment, right? But people focused on the hearing aids, and they weren't great hearing aids. They're okay. Don't get me wrong, they were okay. They weren't great, right? But it wasn't. That wasn't what struck me about it. What struck me about Lexi here and HearX's drive and their strategy is that Lexi here and the innovation is really in the model and the system that they have to connect with their customers. That's really where the innovation is. Innovation isn't the hearing aids. You could Lexi hearing, and I said it in the article, could sell any hearing aids. In a couple of years' time, Lexi hearing aid could be selling Phonak hearing aids or GN hearing aids. It's not the product really that fascinates me about Lexi and is why I think Lexi will be successful or continue to be successful. It's really about the systems that they have in place and the innovation that they have in their customer journey and customer communication. And I think that the profession could learn a lot from that, and the industry. The industry could certainly learn a lot from that, especially when they're forcing people to go to the local fucking friendly audiologist that they don't want to fucking go to buy a product. So, again, quickly coming back to, this introduction of the Bose here now to Lexi's portfolio, for want of a better term, again, that's particularly interesting. Because, as I said, I already felt, I don't know, a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, whatever it was, that Lexi could really be the vehicle for any hearing aid product. And that introduction of the Bose hearing aids, I think, kind of backs that up. Bose kind of announced that they were finished selling hearing aids, and people kind of thought it was quite funny. It just seems like maybe they are that quite finished. Maybe they've decided that actually they don't have the learning or the skills or the systems needed um, to really maximize their penetration, but they have the brand. Lexi have the skills, the experience, and the system, I would say, to maximize that brand or maximize their penetration whilst using that brand.
Well,
Um, so yeah, no, I think that's really, it is quite recent. It's really fascinating, I think. What about you? What's your thoughts?
well, I was going to ask you what is it? Because I think you're actually onto something that's pretty interesting here, which is OTC serving as a catalyst, not necessarily just for the innovation around the devices themselves, but around the overall experience. And I do think that it's a really interesting way in which they onboard, Lexi Hearing onboards the customer, the patient, whatever you want to call them, from the start. And the way that the app engages you, there's things like it will reward you for usage, so it's starting to solve some of these long-standing issues that have always sort of plagued, I think, the overall adoption of hearing aids. Is like, how do you prevent people from buying them and then sticking them in a drawer? And part of that is you need to make sure that they get like that full acclimation period to where they get comfortable with it. So maybe you can incentivize them. And that's where it's really interesting to see this combination of like a software based device that's feeding a lot of that data back into an app. And then the app is what's really sort of taking that and generating new ways in which you can engage the patient. So, okay, we've noticed that over the past month, you've worn your hearing aids consistently over the course of 30 days. And so, as a reward, we're going to send you your next set of batteries or these different accessories or whatever it might be, a subscription that you can use your hearing aids with. The list goes down the line, but I just think that this point that you're making, and I'm curious to kind of throw it back at you and just get a sense of what really stood out to you about the overall user experience that resonated, because I agree that that seems to be another area that's very, very ripe for innovation, that maybe that will be a more visible byproduct, at least immediately, from the OTC hearing aid stuff.
Yeah, I wrote an article years ago, and one of the things I talk about quite a lot in relation to the profession is what I call, strategic communication. There's tactical communication and then long-term strategical communication with consumers or patients. And one of the things I've always spoken about is a weekly email. So 7 days after they purchased, a follow up with cleaning instructions, or changing your wax guard, or a question and answer in relation to survey in relation to how they're doing, have they changed their batteries, do they need to change their wax guard, etc., etc., etc. And that you build on this communication in order to ensure that the sale remains a sale. So there's no cancellation. Also, that the customer is getting the best possible service and the best possible experience moving forward. And as well as that, you get early notification of fucking problems, because if you have an early notification of the problem, you can deal with it straight away, and again doesn't turn into a cancellation. So, like I've talked about this for a long time, and um, written a couple of articles about it. I had conversations, and then Lexi came along, and I went through the system with the Lexi hearing aids. I was like, these fuckers are reading my mind. It's like, fucking hell. Like, walking around the house like they're like they've generated this onboarding experience that's excellent, like that deals with, in a step-by-step way, that deals with all of these things that we're all aware of. Like it's not it's not fucking rocket science. Like we know they have issues cleaning their tubes, a tin tube device, Lexi, or at least the original was. So we know they have problems cleaning their tubes. We know, like, with other aids, they have problems with their wax guards. We know sometimes they put the batteries in the wrong fucking way. Like it's not rocket science. So what are you trying to do? You design a system of communication that addresses all of these things before they happen. And that's the beauty of it. When you address it before it fucking happens, it's like, oh yeah, they said that happened. If you address it after it happens, oh, I had a fucking problem.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, you solved it for me.
Yeah.
So Lexi really, 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 considered that, thought about that, and set out a really outstanding strategy. The beauty of it is that they have a captured consumer, so it's all done through the app. So it's notifications through the app. So the consumer looks at it. You know what I mean? Like, so you've got this captured consumer, you've captured their attention with push notifications. Like, so they see it, they have the experience, they understand what's happening, and then on top of that onboarding experience, and as well, they've thought about the long term experience. It's not just about the first month or the for 6 months even. They've thought about the onboarding and the long term experience of every consumer and the communications that they need. But also, as you said, they gamified
Yeah.
wearing fucking hearing aids. That's what they did. It's like it's fucking genius. Um,
Yeah.
like so they're encouraging people to wear hearing aids to get rewards, and it's a game, and you get your points, and building up my points,
Yeah.
and like it's really outstanding system, and that's where the innovation is. Like I said it originally in the original article about Lexi. Lexi could be selling any hearing aids, and I assume that their mid to long term strategy is to do that. In essence, they will be, I don't know, like, they will be a beast that doesn't fucking exist, because they won't be like an online retailer in the sense of, most of the online retailers that are available or that offer, hearing aid products
Something
globally.
something I'm, like that's coming to mind here as you're talking is that, think about how this might cascade from the OTC market. That's kind of the impetus where this all sort of begins. And then it kind of moves as it becomes, the market responds positively to this. Well, what do you think the major manufacturers are going to do with their premium or medical device offerings? I think that they're going to follow suit. And then cascade that down to the providers where I think they'll look at this, and that's actually a really net positive where you have, you can alleviate all of the, like you said, you can preempt some of the more frequently asked questions around, notifications of like, be sure to change your batteries, be sure to change your wax guards. Here's like a quick 30-second video on your phone that shows you exactly how to change your wax guard. And so I just think that a lot of this stuff that's ultimately going to probably be born in the consumer market very well will probably make its way to the broader offering. And so I think that a lot of the innovation that we might see across the board very well may derive from the consumer market. And I think that's going to be, it's going to be things like this where you're more effectively um, reducing the amount of trivial interactions, I guess is the way to put it, between patient and provider, freeing the provider up more and ultimately creating a better experience. Like, again, to your point, a lot of the frustration and the poor user experience might be able to be headed off at the pass if you just preempt it and you have these things that are like, look, we know that around 20 days or whatever, around 14 days, you got to change that first wax guard. And that is actually a giant hindrance of adoption because a lot of people just assume this thing's a piece of crap and I'm going to throw it in the drawer. So you get in front of these things early and you just kind of like start to layer on these new forms of communication. And I really think that these kinds of things they're likely to be like widely proliferated and standardized, I think, and as the market responds favorably to it, in the consumer side of the portion of the market.
Yeah, like I think that the reason why I think the reason why this doesn't exist in the Phonak app or the Unitron app or the Widex app or whatever, right? The reason why these things don't necessarily exist is because most of the manufacturers are still in the mindset where they're a B2B company, right? And it's only, I think, in the recent past and in the last few years that many of the manufacturers have started to realize, well, actually, they're a B2B to C company.
Right.
And I think it's been difficult. I think it's difficult for the manufacturers as well because they're trying not to piss off the profession, right? Sometimes successfully, sometimes not. So. but yeah, so I think that's kind of blinkered their thinking, and again, I think the GM thing that we spoke about there with the Jabra earbud stroke hearing aids is really a case in point there. Where a manufacturers realise that consumers want something different, okay, but in introducing that something different, they also have to be very cognizant of the profession who have been their customers. And to a certain extent, I think that they feel that they're shackled slightly in what they can do and what they can't do. But yeah, I think you're dead right in relation to this innovation is happening really in the consumer facing area, and manufacturers aren't fucking stupid. They didn't become multi-million companies
multi-billion.
Multi-billion companies by being stupid. So yeah, I think that the manufacturers, it's coming to a stage where the manufacturers will have to do something, because they can't. It will become a time where they can no longer ignore the elephant in the room. Especially say fucking Apple, introduces a new set of earbuds Pro that have not just live speech processing, but outstanding noise reduction and directional microphones. For 300 quid a pop, or Google's Alphabet's Pixel earbuds are upgraded to be basically exactly the same as the Jabra earbud stroke hearing aids. And that's not far. That's not far away. Those guys are thinking about that, and it's obvious that they are, because they see it. They don't just see it as a possible way into the health industry or whatever. But they see it as opening access to their products to people, to everybody. You know what I mean? So I think you'll see that it'll be a strong driver for them moving forward. Customized audio has exploded in the last few years, right? I mean, exploded in the last few years.
Yeah.
You can fucking tune your fucking telly to your hearing now, so yeah. It's just an extension of that, an evolution of that, an evolution that makes sense for these businesses, not because they want to focus on the hearing aid market, but because it makes sense to them to serve their consumers, and their wider consumer. So yeah, when those things happen, and I think they will. I mean, hearing aid manufacturers are going to have to be able to turn on a dime in relation to what they offer, the consumer experience that they offer. They'll have to realize once and for all and embrace that the people who buy the fucking hearing aids are their customers. And I don't mean the professionals. The end user is their customer. And realistically, the end user kind of is their customer. Even though up to now it's they've never acknowledged that, or they try their best not to acknowledge that. Like they will have to deal with that. Like if you think about it, you go to fucking Best Buy or whatever the fuck you have over there and buy a Samsung TV, right? And 14 months later it breaks down. Do you ring Best Buy with your Samsung TV that's out of warranty 2 months? No, you don't. You ring Samsung. You got the Samsung Technical Support, right? Samsung Technical Support tell you what they can fix or can't fix. They charge you, they don't charge you, whatever. Right? But you don't go back to Best Buy, to deal with your problem. And it's obvious, and it strikes many of our customers as kind of odd that they can't ring Phonak or Resound, or they can't get online with Unitron or Starkey or whatever and deal with them for technical support if there's a failure or whatever. And then we explain to them, no, this is just how we do it, how we manage it, blah, blah, blah. We'll send it to the manufacturer, etc., etc., etc. And they just kind of accept it moving forward. But it's not for them as a consumer, an inexperienced hearing aid consumer, it's not what they expect, because their consumer experiences up to now have been with, I suppose, what we call mainstream electronics retailers and mainstream electronics producers. So yeah, no, to answer your question, I think that, yeah, you're going to see this cascade right across. It'll make sense. I think for the profession, it would be very useful if the manufacturers built the system to customize in some way. You know, say for instance, the professional could do a video with the wax guards, and it could be inserted in or whatever, that type of thing. Also, maybe the professional would be able to send some push notifications or something like that and relate, say, a happy birthday notification or whatever, right? Because it's more personalized. It's a personal way forward. It's also one of the big things I think that more and more consumers are looking for. They're looking for a personalized service and a personal relationship, very much so in healthcare. So I think that would be very useful for professionals. The only thing you would be, I think that you'd have to convince manufacturers that the profession would actually fucking use it, because hey, it costs money to build this stuff. Do you know what I mean? It's money and time, and like I know in my Widex team, they were really fucking excited about this, like, because they felt that really, really would help with onboarding. It would help with, kind of personal communication, and all of those things, right? But and then just nobody fucking used it. Maybe I'm just a nerd. Maybe I just get fucking excited with shit like that. But for me, I think it just makes sense. So I'll stop now.
Well, I think those are, I agree with you that I think that there's going to be a lot of areas of innovation that occur that aren't necessarily just tied to the device itself. And I think it's going to be really interesting to see how the whole delivery model of this of hearing aids more or less changes in time, because I do think that the building blocks are there now for a more direct exchange of goods. And I think that kind of begs the question of what's the professional's role in this kind of changing equation. So, Geoff, this has been fantastic. Thanks again for coming on. Any closing thoughts?
No, it's been a pleasure. I think the only thing I'd say is I'd echo what you said. I think that we're heading. Eventually we're heading towards a DTC world, like a
Yeah,
direct to consumer world. However, I don't think that's the end for the profession, and I think that the profession can in fact have a place in that world that makes sense to the profession. But
totally.
again, only if we're willing to innovate and offer services that make sense to the consumer.
Yeah,
Um, because the consumer is king. I've been saying this for years. Fucking lots of people before me have been saying this for years. The consumer will actually decide what's going to happen. We
right.
won't. Um, we can stand and throw our fucking ties out of the pram and get red faced and shout at each other, but it's not going to make a shit of difference.
Yeah.
And, for us to remain relevant to the consumer, we have to make sure that we're fucking relevant to the consumer.
Well
So
said. Well said.
that's it.
That's awesome, man. Well, thank you so much. I really do appreciate you being a part of the first 100 episodes. And, as soon as I resume the podcast, I'm sure I'll bring you back on here to talk more about everything going on in this world.
Yeah, well, listen, good luck on your coming event. As I said, I will pray for you.
Thank you, Geoff. I appreciate it. Take care, man.